And so, for the first time ever, our first guest tonight was banned on television last night. Stephen Colbert's most popular guest of the year so far is not a movie star. He's someone most Americans have never heard of until CBS decided that their viewers should not hear from him last night on Stephen Colbert's program. In 2006, Stephen Colbert started using the phrase the Colbert bump to describe the surge in popularity that could happen for someone just by being on TV with Stephen. A surge in book sales, or in the case of politicians, a bump up in the polls. And now the Colbert bump has taken on new meaning. And we here at The Last Word stand ready to accept any guest on this program after that guest is bumped out of Stephen Colbert's show by cowardly corporate lawyers. Last night, when I watched Stephen Colbert tell the story of what happened at his show yesterday, I thought, let's get James Tallarico on this show tonight.
You know who is not one of my guests tonight? That's Texas State Representative James Tallarico. He was supposed to be here, but we were told in no uncertain terms by our network's lawyers, who called us directly, that we could not have him on the broadcast. Then I was told in some uncertain terms that not only could I not have him on, I could not mention me not having him on. And because my network clearly doesn't want us to talk about this, let's talk about this. You've probably heard. So, you might have heard of this thing called the equal time rule, okay? It's an old FCC rule that applies only to radio and broadcast television, not cable or streaming, that says if a show has a candidate on during an election, they have to have all that candidate's opponents on as well. It's the FCC's most time-honored rule right after no nipples at the Super Bowl. There's long been an exception for this rule, an exception for news interviews and talk show interviews with politicians. Now, that's crucial. How else were voters supposed to know back in '92 that Bill Clinton sucked at saxophone? But on January 21st of this year, a letter was released by FCC chairman and smug bowling pin Brendan Carr. In this letter, Carr said he was thinking about dropping the exception for talk shows because he said some of them were motivated by partisan purposes. Well, sir, you're chairman of the FCC, so FCCU.
That actually wasn't a photograph of James Tallarico because the network wouldn't allow Stephen Colbert to actually even show an image of James Tallarico. It took CBS's lawyers almost 24 hours to come up with a response to Stephen Colbert. In a written statement, CBS said, quote, "The Late Show was not prohibited by CBS from broadcasting the interview with Representative James Tallarico. The show was provided legal guidance that the broadcast could trigger the FCC equal time rule for two other candidates, including Representative Jasmine Crockett, and presented options for how the equal time for other candidates could be fulfilled. The Late Show decided to present the interview through its YouTube channel with on-air promotion on the broadcast rather than potentially providing the equal time option." The CBS lawyers are factually and legally wrong, as anyone who knows the law should know. It would be impossible for James Tallarico's appearance or any politician's appearance on Stephen Colbert's show to trigger the FCC equal time rule. The rule does not apply to entertainment television like Stephen Colbert's show in any way. FCC Commissioner Anna Gomez issued a statement instructing the CBS lawyers on the law, saying CBS is fully protected under the First Amendment to determine what interviews it airs, which makes its decision to yield to political pressure all the more disappointing. The FCC is powerless to impose restrictions on protected speech, and any attempt to intimidate broadcasters into self-censorship undermines both press freedom and public trust. Remember this about the CBS lawyers. They are the weakest, most cowardly corporate lawyers in America. They are actually in a tie with ABC's lawyers, who we will get to in a moment. The CBS lawyers who are now trying to tell Stephen Colbert who can be a guest on his show work for a parent company that agreed to pay Donald Trump $16 million to settle a frivolous lawsuit by Donald Trump against 60 Minutes, which Donald Trump had no chance of winning, absolutely zero chance of winning. But those cowardly corporate lawyers agreed to pay Donald Trump $16 million in what Stephen Colbert correctly called, quote, a big fat bribe. Those lawyers should be witnesses in the impeachment trial of Donald Trump in the United States Senate right now for that bribe. That is their filthy spot that they now occupy in American political and corporate legal history. Right beside the ABC lawyers for their corporate parent Disney that agreed to pay Donald Trump $15 million in a frivolous lawsuit against ABC News, a lawsuit that Donald Trump would not have won. The entire legal team at ABC and Disney disgraced themselves, along with the corporate chieftains of Disney's Magic Kingdom, in their acquiescence to Donald Trump, in their settling a lawsuit that Donald Trump would not have won. The lawyers did not have the courage to use their legal skills to fight Donald Trump's attempt to get money from this company, Donald Trump's illegal interference in their business. And so they paid him off. America has three legacy networks, NBC, ABC, and CBS. They are our oldest networks, and two of them have handed over big fat bribes to Donald Trump with the approval of the most cowardly corporate lawyers known to be currently working in America. Not one of those lawyers offered a principled resignation over the big fat bribe. Not one of them. We have seen lawyers publicly resigning from the Trump Justice Department on principle from Washington to Minneapolis, but not one CBS lawyer, not one ABC lawyer. If those lawyers are watching tonight, they should listen to our last guest in this hour tonight, a real lawyer, a former public defender, Emily Galvan Almanza, who will tell them what our legal system is really about. Those networks and their corporate parents disgraced themselves with those payoffs to Donald Trump, and not one person involved in the decision, from the lawyers to the top of the company, the decision to make those payoffs, not one of those people has had the courage to resign in principle. Instead, they are busy policing Stephen Colbert's guest list. The CBS lawyers were disgraced enough by the big fat payoff, and then they interfere with Stephen Colbert's show yesterday and then lie about the law today to desperately try to defend their own cowardice. Stephen Colbert conducted his interview with James Tallarico, but showed it only on YouTube, where it has received more views than any Stephen Colbert episode so far this year. In fact, James Tallarico got double the audience that Taylor Swift got on Stephen Colbert's show. In the interview that is available on YouTube, James Tallarico offered an answer to why corporate lawyers living in fear of Donald Trump are trying to drive him off television.
Welcome back, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, joining me now is a representative in the Texas State House who is currently running for the United States Senate. Please welcome to The Late Show YouTube page, Representative James Tallarico. Now, here's the thing. I don't usually say this to a guest, but if people are watching this right now, it's because they found us online on YouTube. I did an act of the show that's on tonight explaining why. It's not the first time you've caused some drama. FCC opening probe into The View after appearance by Tallarico. Do you mean to cause trouble?
I think that Donald Trump is worried that we're about to flip Texas. And Stephen, this is the party that ran against cancel culture, and now they're trying to control what we watch, what we say, what we read, and this is the most dangerous kind of cancel culture, the kind that comes from the top. They went after The View because I went on there.